Hello everybody, it's Ezra time again and welcome back to another reaction videos, and today I'm gonna be reacting to Game Theory FNAF, Your Pain Fuels Us. So last time we get to, with Matpat theory about the Stitchwraith, about the book, I think, about the girl, I kind of forget the name, but where she wake up in 1:35 a.m. the entire time, which is causing him to be her to be stressful, and then enter a van, I think, and then she got killed in there, which I don't know if that one connected to the sister location or not. I don't know. And there is apparently, I don't know if there's gonna be like a two golden Freddy spirits, like two separate spirits, like Cassidy and the other one from the book, or it's gonna be the same one, the same spirits. I mean, who knows at this point? It could be anything. It's Five Nights at Freddy's. We all know that. So this one is called Your Pain Fuels Us, and based on a thumbnail, maybe we get to see more about the Stitch work this time, because I'm kind of curious about the Stitchwraith, because it seems interesting to me. It seems like it seems beyond the FNAF lore that we actually known, in the past. I mean, this whole new lore is actually beyond the lore that we know in the past. It's not just a guy killing a kids and then the kid's spirit trapped in the animatronics and then he hunts the pizzeria. Even though yes, there is some dark spirit I think in the book that kind of lure people to the pizzeria and all that kind of stuff, but it's heading to the next level. It's heading to a different direction, and I'm actually curious to find out. So without further ado, let's just get into the video, shall we?
It's alive! It's alive!
Oh, it's alive, people.
Hello, Internet!
Game
Welcome
Theory.
to Game Theory, where today we're covering the scariest topic in all of FNAF lore, the timeline. But
Yeah,
not
the
for the
timeline.
games. Oh, geez, no, I hate myself, but not that much. Whew, I'll probably have to do that at some point down the line, but not today. No, what we're covering
Yeah.
today is a different timeline. You see, there's a new monster afoot in the FNAF universe, a killer that has horrifically taken the lives of nearly a dozen people. A killer as yet unseen in the games, but one who will, after today's theory, provide us with key insights into how this whole FNAF universe works, the true nature of Remnant, and how ghosts can possess endoskeletons. As I said, he hasn't been in a game yet, but I have a feeling he'll
Yeah.
be showing up soon. Maybe as soon as the new game's security
security
breach. But in
breach.
order to know for sure,
Maybe.
it's our job to track his movements, to understand what his goals are, and where he's headed to
Okay,
next.
hit me
You
with the
see,
theory,
last
Matpat.
FNAF theory, we did a surface level analysis of 1:35 a.m., the latest installment of the Fazbear Fright series. And boy, was that one a biggie, with huge revelations about sister location, ultimate custom knight's vengeful spirit, and the real identity, or should I say identities, of
Yeah,
Golden Freddy.
Golden
And
Freddy.
looking back, since the Fazbear Frights books became a thing, I've done 5 theories on them, covering the many, many connections that they have to the various facets of FNAF lore. From new strings of murders happening in 1985 to the true identity of psychic friend Fredbear. But despite all of this new FNAF talk, there's been one element I've largely been glossing over. The
Yeah, the
Stitchwraith.
Stitchwraith,
In the event
yeah.
that you haven't picked up any of the installments of the book series yet, let me catch you up. Each new book contains 3 short stories, right? That's the selling feature. It's what's advertised on the back of the box, so to speak. But each one also comes with a bit of a bonus. In reality, each book is more like 3 1/5 stories. You see, each one ends with an epilogue, our little MCU post-credits teaser, giving us a piece of yet another story. The tale of the Stitchwraith. A story that appears to be spanning out across the ending of each and every book in this new series. And that alone would be pretty darn cool, right? Also, it's a brilliant marketing tactic to keep us buying more just to see the end of this thing.
Yeah,
Slow clap,
agree.
Scott Cawthon. Slow clap. But
Yeah, well-
three
well
segments
done,
in, and
well
it's
done,
becoming
Scott.
clear that the tale of the Stitchwraith isn't just another horror tale. It's instead a running thread throughout nearly every other shorter story that we've been reading through, which in turn seems to connect it both to the original trilogy of books as well as even the games. So in order to understand what this thing is and where the lore is headed, it's time to go Easter egg hunting for a monster. Now, admittedly,
Yes,
my first
let's
theory on
go,
the
let's
Fazbear
go,
Frights
Matpat.
books briefly covered the Stitchwraith, and back then I assumed he was Ennard. The Wraith was described in that book as a mysterious figure wearing a black cloak and wearing a white mask with features drawn in thick black marker. The description specifically calls out his two eyes, one of which appears to be blacked out, a big toothy grin with blood around the mouth, and a limping or shambling walk. White mask, blacked out eye, shamble, shake. It seems like a slam dunk for Ennard. However, the epilogue for 1:35 a.m. threw that hypothesis out the window, as it revealed just exactly how the Stitchwraith was brought to life. A process that actually reveals a lot about how this series' mythos works. In this epilogue, we're introduced to Dr. Phineas Taggart, not to be confused with his friend Dr. Ferb Fletcher. Phineas is
Yeah.
a bit of a mad scientist type, studying the untapped power of human emotion. As he says himself, quote, "Human emotion is slower to impact, more insidious. It emanates from us, or is excreted from us like sweat or tears, and it wafts outward like a noxious cloud soaking into the surroundings." In particular, his research is centered around the intense emotion of agony. In order to study it, we see that Phineas collects hundreds of haunted objects to search for this emotion trapped inside. Again, from the book, the word haunted could mean showing signs of torment or some kind of mental anguish. These items on Phineas's shelves weren't possessed by ghosts. The ones that were truly haunted were energized by agony. Agony, I'm convinced, radiates farther from people than any other emotion, Phineas said. My work is focused on my hypothesis that you can take a saturation of agony, add any sort of intelligence, even an artificial one, and they'll combine together to transmute the energy of emotion into the energy of physical action. This, I believe, is what explains what people call haunted objects. And already you might be starting to see how this all ties into what we already know about this franchise. In FNAF 6's Insanity ending, we were introduced to the blueprints outlining how the sister
Yeah.
location Scooper worked, and it was, well, it was not what we expected, to say the least. Through those blueprints, we learned about the mystery metal called Remnant, and its ability to supposedly give life to
Remnant.
objects that it touches. The novel The Fourth Closet took it one step further and showed us the Remnant metal being created and used. In that story, we watch as William Afton melts down pieces of the old animatronics, creating a remnant soup that he then uses to give life to new living robots, specifically the Funtime animatronics. Quote, "On the heating table rested the endoskeletons of the original Freddy's animatronics, welded and melted together, immobile and featureless, and still inhabited by the spirits of the children who had been murdered inside of them so many years ago, still filled with life and motion and thought, all trapped, all in terrible pain." Usually this goes into something mechanical, something I made, William said. If we remember back to Candy Cadet's stories of 5 things always becoming one thing, 5 kittens getting sewn together, or 5 keys melted down into one, this is exactly what those stories were referring to. But Phineas's experiments in 1:35 a.m. actually take it one step further and give us more insight into the true nature of Remnant. Things that are brought to life via Remnant aren't necessarily infused with a soul, but instead with agony, with intense human emotion, with extreme human suffering. This is important because it means that characters like Balloon Boy, the Bitty Babs, and the Mini Renas and Sister Location, heck, even animatronics like Mangle, don't necessarily need to have actual victims associated with them. We used to look at solving the mysteries of this series as having it be one-to-one all the time. Susie equals Chica, Charlie equals the puppet, Cassidy equals Golden Freddy. But what we're starting to learn is that there are other ways to bring things to life in this series, that some animatronics may contain multiple souls, like we talked about last time with Golden Freddy, and some might not contain any souls at all, as long as it always ties back to some extreme tragedy filled with this all-powerful emotion of agony. So with that little analysis in place, let's go back to our story. We see
Man, this
Phineas
is
collect
really
objects
interesting.
associated with horrific tragedies, and via some means funnel all the agony from them down into an endoskeleton, which we're specifically told is meant to be a stand-in for bones, so we're talking like a FNAF 1 or FNAF 2 era endoskeleton here. Phineas then puts the head of a large 3-foot doll on it, a doll whose description bears a shocking similarity to Blank, actually, from the fan game Five Nights at Candy's. And finally, finally a battery pack before turning this beast on. And not only does this modern Frankenstein come to life, it immediately kills its creator, Phineas, seemingly by accident, surprisingly, and then runs off, hiding under a black cloak. The Stitchwraith has been born. But okay, why am I making such a big deal out of this thing? Why does this guy deserve his own episode? Well, because solving the Stitchwraith story in these books is like a game unto itself. You see, there have been very subtle clues hidden throughout the 9 other stories in this series that connect things back to the Stitchwraith. My first clue was the battery pack Phineas uses to power the Stitchwraith as he's building it. Because it's not just any battery pack. It came from Fetch, the murder animatronic dog from book 2 of the series. Quote, the item in the second box was an animatronic dog that clearly no longer functioned. The dog was an ugly dog, with a triangle-shaped head and a wide mouth full of sharp teeth. In minutes, he'd revealed the dog's battery pack. So immediately we know that the Stitchwraith story is happening after the events of the Fetch story from book number 2. So I dug around deeper and more connections kept coming. Earlier in this same book, in the title story 1:35 a.m. about the haunted Ella doll, there's one line referencing a man named Phineas looking online for a particular toy. Quote again, one of the searches for special Ella doll led her to an online ad posted by a user named Phineas who was trying to find one of the dolls. His ad referenced the special Ella doll and said he was willing to pay a premium for the doll's energy. Overall, across the 9 stories published so far, 7 seem to tie back to the Stitchwraith, allowing us to create a rough timeline of events. So bear with me as we go through this. We know that 1:35 a.m. and Fetch must come first because Phineas is alive and looking for the Ella doll like I just mentioned, and the evil robot dog has just started his murder spree. From there comes the story we just covered, Epilogue 3 and the Stitchwraith's creation. After that, he begins to roam the city collecting body parts for some purpose. You may remember book number 1 story to be Beautiful, in which Baby hacks apart a human girl named Sarah in order to steal her identity. Sarah is rebuilt out of junk only for her to fall to pieces at the end. Well, in epilogue number 1, we hear that the Stitchwraith was seen collecting those junk pieces of Sarah. Odd, right? And it's not the only time that it happens either. In book number 2, there's the story Out of Stock about a group of friends who steal a defective plush trap doll, one with oddly human-like eyes and teeth, only for it to go on a rampage. The boys manage to escape by luring it in front of an oncoming train where it gets shattered to pieces. And again, in epilogue number 2, we see the Stitchwraith on the scene salvaging whatever he can find of the broken box. And that's where it would seem to end if it weren't for one other small detail. You see, in one of the other stories in this book, Room for One More, about a security guard being force-fed mini Rena dolls in the basement of Circus Babies Entertainment and Rentals, there's a passing reference to a restaurant called the Snack Space. Hey man, I was picking up a takeout order at Luigi's the other night and saw your ex on a date with the manager of the Snack Space. Seems super unimportant, right? Well, it would be if this was the only time that it was mentioned, but it's popped up in one of the other stories. In Into the Pit, the very first story, the one about the time-traveling ball pit, the Snack Space is where the protagonist's father works, which means that Circus Babies Entertainment and Rentals' sister location is also in that world, which in turn connects it to one final story, Count the Ways, where we see an old, broken Funtime Freddy planning to execute a girl trapped inside of his stomach. And while these aren't necessarily directly tied to the Stitchwraith, it certainly feels like at some point all of these stories will come together, as though we're working on chunks of a larger puzzle. We've got a big chunk over here that's the Stitchwraith connections, and a big chunk over here that's all connected through sister location and the Snack Space, and then you have a few other random pieces over here, and by the end I expect all of them will come together. So assuming that they are all connected, the timeline seems to go about like this. Lonely Freddy, the story about the kids getting mind swapped with mini Freddy dolls, has to be first because it's the only one of these stories so far where Fazbear locations are open and ready for business. At some point, Freddy Fazbear's closes, leading to Room for One More about the underground facility filled with mini Renas hoping to escape, which would parallel what we hear in Sister Location.
Due to the massive success, and even more so the unfortunate closing of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, it was clear that the stage was set, no pun intended, for another contender in children's entertainment. entertainment.
At some point, Baby and the Mini-Renas escape from that underground facility, leading to 1:35 a.m. with Phineas looking for the haunted doll and Greg activating the murder dog in an abandoned Freddy Fazbear's in Fetch. From there, the next major moment is Stitchwraith's creation in Epilogue 3, which then leads to his quest for body parts in To Be Beautiful Epilogue 1 and Out of Stock Epilogue 2. We also know that Into the Pit and The New Kid happen near the end of the timeline, since they both feature a closed down, forgotten, or repurposed Freddy's building. Also, there's Count the Ways, which is towards the end of this timeline, grouped with these other stories, since a retired Funtime Freddy is just randomly sitting in a garage killing kids. What does all of this tell us? What was the purpose of doing all this work? Well, first, all of this seems to connect us pretty solidly into the book trilogy. The fact that we have an Ella doll infused with agony that Phineas wants his hands on perfectly matches the Ella doll that Henry made for his daughter Charlie. To quote from the fourth closet, agony erupted, flooding the room with its sound. A man lay curled on the floor, something cradled tightly in his arms, and when his mouth opened, the room shook with the sound of his anguish. Who is that? Charlie said anxiously. What is he holding? You don't recognize her? Elizabeth said. That's Ella, of course. It's all your father had left after you were taken. He cried over that cheap store-bought rag doll for 2 months, cried into it, bled into it, poured his grief over it, end quote. At which point, he makes the robotic Ella doll that we talked about in the last episode. So what we're seeing in these stories appears to be, at least to some extent, the aftermath of that trilogy of books. Which also means that we might already know the true identity of the Stitchwraith. It's a bit of a long shot, but it's my personal headcanon until proven otherwise. I think that the endoskeleton that powers the Stitchwraith, the main body that's become the conduit for all of this agony, is the same endoskeleton that killed Henry. The robot that he used to end his own life. The stabbing robot, which, let's be honest, is like the most complicated way to do that sort of thing. Like, build a robot to stab you to death? What? Creative types, man, they are weird. Anyway, we're told in the Silver Eyes that it's a basic Gen 1 endoskeleton with an unfinished face, which would explain exactly why Phineas needs to put a head on it. Quote from the Silver Eyes, she could see its face, if it could be called a face. Its features were scarcely formed, crude and shapeless. Its blind eyes were only raised bumps like the eyes of a statue, seeing nothing but its own grief. We also know that this endoskeleton would be absolutely filled to the brim with agony. I mean, as far as endoskeletons go, a murder bot built by a grieving father is a pretty huge deal. And it's apparently an important enough character to this franchise to have also appeared at the end of the book trilogy. When Charlie is being attacked by Baby, it's this same murder bot and its trusty knife that Charlie uses to do them both in. I have a very, very strong theorist instinct that the Stitchwraith will, at some point during this book series, be revealed to be connected back to Henry and his bizarre death. Just saying, the pieces are in place for us. Oh yeah, and assuming that the Fazbear Fright series is connected a bit closer to the book trilogy, like it appears to be, we know that Book 5, Bunny Call, features a story about a man with gruesome burns over his body and an iron will to live. I mean, we already suspected that that was William Afton, but going back to see how his story ended in the fourth closet, we see that his death is far from certain. In his final moments, his hospital gown catches fire and he's pulled into a massive furnace. But then, nothing. No official confirmation that that burning actually kills him. Therefore, a burned man in a hospital who refuses to die sounds like a certain yellow bunny we all know who always comes back. And with that, I've had enough Fnaf for now. Oh man, it has been a lot. The new book comes out in early July, so at the very least I get a break for a couple of weeks. Thank goodness. No. No. No! Man, I am a little on edge these days.
Yeah, he's not gonna
2020
stop,
has really
Matpat.
started to mess with my head. I need to relax. But I've seen all of this, literally everything on every streaming platform. If only there was something new to watch. Wait, can it be? Our sponsor for today's episode, NordVPN. What are you?
VPN again.
And
Man, so many channels
Theory.
sponsored by
A game
NordVPN.
theory. Stay sane out there, guys, and thanks for watching.
Thank you, Matt. Yeah, 2020 is not good, but you know what? Fine, we'll keep going. It's not June. We're halfway through the end of 2020, so we'll see. So that was the game theory of Fnaf. Your pain fuels us. So that was really interesting though, because again, like Matpat said, that we always assume that all animatronics actually alive, quote unquote alive, but because there is a soul inside the animatronics, right? But now apparently it doesn't need a soul. Apparently there is, if you got apparently agony, and then you actually put that into the animatronics, then those animatronics could stay, could be alive as well, alive, quote unquote, and acting aggressive, because well, it's agony, so what can you expect? And that alone makes it really interesting. So not all animatronics actually have a soul, but some of them actually, like Matpat said, Mangle, I think one of them, and Balloon Boy, I think. Apparently those animatronic has an agony, and apparently Phineas, Dr. Phineas, make the use the agony to power the animatronics, quote unquote power, by the way. I mean, he needs the battery, but basically put that agony there and has some sort of like his own soul, I think, a little bit. Not exactly a kid's soul trapped in that animatronic, but you got the agony, you got the power, obviously, and that animatronic become like I don't know, thinking basically like a human being, which is kind of weird. But it's Five Nights at Freddy's, so I guess it's not that surprising. It's not that weird. FNAF is always complicated, so what can I tell, right? What can we do? But so far, I really interesting to see where this Stitchwraith story going, because it seems interesting, and the fact that because yeah, Matpat assumed that was Anart back in the day, but somebody actually said that it's not Anart, and somebody in the comment section actually tell me that Stitchwraith is not Anart, and I was like, well, I am assuming it was Anart. I'm not exactly sure, but apparently nope, it has a white mask, a missing eye, and apparently there is a blood smile in there, kind of like the Joker a little bit. um, but I'm really curious to see where the Stitchwraith stories goes, because it seems like after Stitchwraith active, quote unquote active, he kills Phineas, right? And then he goes outside the building, and then he goes outside to the street, wearing a cloak, obviously, and then collecting parts for some reason, for something I don't know. Which again, I don't know. Again, Matpat, I don't think anybody knows what the Stitchwraith story was at this point. We get the clues here and there, but we don't exactly know what the Stitchwraith goal was, because he was created with agony and then all that kind of stuff, and then suddenly, accidentally, apparently, Stitchwraith killed Dr. Phineas, and then all of a sudden he actually roamed the street and collecting parts. I mean, why? Number one, maybe he collecting parts to rebuild Dr. Phineas. I don't know, man. I don't know. Okay, guys, I don't know. It could be something bigger. It could be something pretty ambiguous in the end. Maybe in the end of the day, we're never gonna find out what the Stitchwraith story was. Maybe we're gonna have to piece the clue together, and of course, I'm gonna leave that to Matpat. I'm not gonna piece that together myself, because again, I don't have the book. I can't buy the book. Um, and again, I'm not exactly sure. I'm curious about the FNAF lore and all that kind of stuff, and I'm actually interesting to hear somebody else's theory about it. But I'm not exactly a kind of guy who actually making theories on my own, like spending time on my own, searching the clue and building my own theory around it. Like I used to do that back in the day, back when FNAF 4 was released, I think, where I piecing something together between FNAF 1 to 3, and sometimes 4. But again, FNAF 4 basically that's where everybody was like, okay, man, I give up. I don't have any answer for FNAF 4. Even to this day, you can still go back to FNAF 4 and finding the answer. You know what I mean? And sometimes the answer to FNAF 4 is still different. So yeah, I think that's where everybody was like, okay, you know what? Nah, I'm not gonna taking any more theories on FNAF. Like still, sure, people say interesting on hearing the theory. That's why I'm watching game theory, because Mappa has been the best on this FNAF theory. Again, it's just a theory. It's not a fact. Some people might disagree with that. Again, it's fine. You have your own opinion. You have your own theory. That's fine. But don't come in and attack Matpat. Please don't. Because again, it's just a theory. But again, I believe Matpat, because again, Matpat is a smart guy, and he's really know what he was doing. He's been doing this since a long time ago, and a lot of FNAF fans, I'm assuming, a lot of FNAF community actually trust him for the theory. Again, they might not exactly believe the theory, but they actually trust that. You know what I mean? And yeah, again, I really can wait to see where this Stitchwraith stories goes now, because again, I don't know why he collecting body parts. Matt doesn't even know why. This is Red collecting body parts, maybe to build something bigger, maybe to repair himself. Who knows? And the identity of Stitchwraith apparently is gonna be connected to the animatronics that kill Henry apparently. Hmm. So that should be interesting. Again, I don't know if it's gonna happen. Even Matpat said that it's just a theory. It might happen. It might not happen. Who knows? We just have to wait until July, where the fifth book was released. And yeah, and so far this new FNAF book, like again, I watched some of it on Dalco's channel, where he read the book, he read the plot, he gave his own theory, he gave his own review of the book, and so far I really enjoyed them, you know, from Dalco's video, because he has like an hour video talking about the book, you know, and giving the plot of the book, you know, which so far the book was really interesting, probably more interesting than the game. At least from the lore standpoint, it was really interesting from at least far more interesting than the game so far, because again, I mean, obviously it's a book, you know, it's obviously story driven, so I guess it's probably unfair for me to compare the game and the book, because those two are connected but at the same time very different, you know, because the book is about story driven characters, while the game was like, well, you play a security guard or something like that, and then something happened, and then you must find out about the story and all that kind of stuff. The game might give you a clue, give you a clue about the lore, you know, which again, FNAF Security Breach is about to be released in 2020, I think. Which I'm really curious, and again, if I can play the game, then I will play the game. I don't know, we have to wait and see about my PC here. Hopefully I can play the game, but we just have to wait and see. We just have to wait and see if my PC can handle it. I mean, it's a FNAF game, so I don't think I need a super high quality PC for doing that, you know. So we'll see what happens. If I can play the game, then I will play the game and maybe do a series on it. Who knows? But yeah, I'm definitely excited for the Security Breach. Definitely excited for the fifth book, and definitely excited to see where the Stitchwraith story goes now, because right now it's getting more and more interesting with this new lore that Scott Cawthon is trying to introduce, and I really hope the FNAF community actually tuning in on the lore. I mean, again, it's not as popular as before, but it's still going. So I mean, that's a good thing, right? It's not just disappeared completely. It's still going. And we got the official movie going on. We don't have. I don't know when the movie's gonna release. Maybe it's 2022. We just have to wait and see. But I really can't wait to see the movie, the game, obviously, and this new book. And I really hope Matpat is gonna do the next series, obviously, in July when the books came out. So yeah, I definitely gonna looking forward to that. I really can't wait to see where the Stitchwraith story goes, finding out his purpose, I guess you can say. We just have to wait and see. You know, maybe the game is gonna. Who knows? Maybe the game give more clues than the book. Who knows? Because so far the game and the book might be connected in some way. You know, it's not exactly obvious, but it was hidden, but it was there. You know, it was connected, but it's not that obvious. You know, which makes me really interesting to see where this new lore going. You know, but there was game theory, the FNAF. Your pain fuels us, and yeah, man, I really interesting to see where this new lore going, and I really hope that the new game maybe kind of give some new clue about the Stitchwraith, because I don't know, when I first hit the Stitchwraith, it seems interesting, you know, so far, and I don't know about you guys. You guys probably like, yeah, it's not that interesting, but to me, it seems interesting. It seems again different than the rest of the story, so I really can't wait to see where they're gonna take that, where Scott gonna take the Stitchwraith stories, you know. But yeah, guys, if you guys want to watch the original video, then I will leave a link in the description below, as always. If you guys want to, and make sure you guys check Game Theory channel, subscribe to Matpat's channel, Game Theory, because Matpat has been doing this series for a long time, and so far he's still kicking in, he's still going, and again, I still trust him, even though again it's just a theory, but I trust Matpat, you know. We just have to wait and see, you know, and for the most part, his theory mostly correct, so that's a fair point, I guess. So once again, check his channel, Game Theory, subscribe to him, show him some support. And if you guys enjoy my reaction video, then please leave a like, comment, and subscribe to this channel, and share this video to your friends or family, the usual. And once again, I want to say thank you for everybody who've been subscribing to this channel and supporting this channel. I really appreciate you guys. And yeah, I think that's it for today's video, and I will see you guys in the next one then. Bye.